This is the first lesson in a series of 5 on the chapter of population. It will be delivered over 5 hour-long classes, and these slides, they don't replace the textbook. The students very much go from that, but they do add some kind of keywords and key terms into their chapter dictionary, which they keep within their notes copies, and they're all signposted as we move throughout the PowerPoint. So to begin the lesson, the students will engage in a short retrieval practice starter task using Carousel. So these are just 5 questions that have been pulled out based on the last unit, which was on the topic of soils. So I just pulled out 5 questions from across the unit, as the students should be in a position now to answer it, seeing as how it's done and completed. The benefit of doing this is that it front loads the means of participation, so just that from the get-go the students are actively working, and it just kind of reduces the opportunities for them to chat or to be distracted before the lesson begins. As they get on with these questions, then I'll circulate the classroom while they're doing this independent practice, just to get a snapshot of, I suppose, the learning, and just to see if there's any kind of gaps in where they're at, or if there's maybe an area or a question in particular that's causing some trouble. So this slide here just has the solutions to the starter task, which was a retrieval practice exercise. Again, I'll give students maybe 2 minutes just to self-correct, mark it right or wrong. I'll have also been circulating the classroom at this point just to see how the bulk of the class we're getting on. Again, if I can see that maybe there's like one particular question or one area that a lot of the class was struggling on, it kind of just gives me the feedback there to go back and maybe reteach if that's the thing that I have to do. Or if there's one question that's kind of causing concern, I can always address that just before I start into the new unit on population. So as this is the first lesson of this new chapter, I would do a think, pair, share activity, like a brainstorm here, just to establish any prior knowledge or to see what the students might already know. So usually they would take 2 or 3 minutes on an individual basis on their mini whiteboards just to fill out any kind of keywords or key terms that they already know about population, or if they have any figures in mind of what the world population could be. After that, then they'll turn and talk to their partner, so they sit in groups of 2, and they can fill in anything that maybe their partner had that they didn't, and vice versa, and share. Again, only another 2 or 3 minutes of doing that, and then I'll take feedback and put a few up on the board. It's just a good way to, I suppose, see where they're at before we begin. So these are our learning intentions for this lesson on the unit of population. So by the end of this lesson, the students will be able to calculate population change, and they will be able to explain the demographic transition model, describing each of the 5 stages. So the purpose of this slide is to get students thinking about world population, and in particular about the figures of the world's population. So from their textbook, they have a figure here of what population was in 2017, and this leads on then into the next slide, which will be a task of them finding out what today's population is using their Chromebooks. Before that happens though, we have the figure here for 2017. I'll pass around the classroom and I will get a few suggestions from students as to what they think the population is today, and then this will give us an idea as to whether they think that the world has grown or whether it has shrunk in the case of the last 7 or 8 years. So this is just a short activity that the students will complete in the lesson. They'll use their Chromebooks, and I will kind of navigate them and guide them through the website in order for them to find out what the world population currently stands at. The purpose of this is that they will use this website then at the end of the class when they're completing their final task, where they'll be asked a number of questions and they'll use the website just to find the answers. This slide here will appeal to visual learners as it shows world population growth on a graph, and making it much easier to follow than it would be if it was in a textbook or written down in a sentence. I'll ask questions then, such as why population has grown so much since the year 1950, and get suggestions from around the class. Again, this is something that I think all learners will be able to contribute to, and I can start off with maybe a weaker student, and then as the answers develop, we can maybe get like a more in-depth answer from a stronger student, and that comes up at the end here at the bottom. So this is the same slide as on the previous one, just as a different passage of writing underneath, and this relates to healthcare. So I'll ask the students questions such as what diseases were around back in 1750 that maybe aren't around anymore. I'll try and get a few examples, and then I'm going to ask how medical care has affected population growth over the years, and then I'll put up the text at the bottom where they can see that medical care and better supply of food has all aided population growth. Again, the slide is just giving some more information on population growth. It also introduces the term population explosion, and I'll get some ideas as to why people think that's the case, why it has that term population explosion. And then I'll ask some questions on where they think population is heading in the future, whether they think it's going to keep increasing or if it's falling down. Again, these questions will be kind of open, so I'll be able to pass around to most students. I'll be able to get an answer probably from most. And then I'll obviously scaffold questions as well, so that some of the weaker students can maybe start off, and then I can pass it on to maybe a more able student who can build on it. So this slide has 5 new terms that is probably new to the students, and they'd be their keywords for the chapter. Again, these are in more detail on the next slide, and that's where they'll define them and put them into their chapter dictionary in their notes copy. But just having a look, it's demography, birth rate and death rate, for which I've included 2 visuals there. So there's obviously the photo of the baby, the birth rate, and then the headstone for death rate. And then you've also got natural increase and natural decrease. But again, these are in more detail on the next slide. So this slide contains 4 key terms that are necessary as the students move throughout this chapter. So it's introducing the definitions of birth rate and death rate, as well as natural increase, natural decrease, and total fertility rate. What would usually happen in class is that the students will look at the words and read through the definitions with me as we go through them. And I'll kind of seek to be sure that, like, most people seem to be understanding them, take any questions, and then I'll allocate for this slide probably 4 or 5 minutes for the students to note this into their chapter dictionary. So inside their notes copy, they'll have like a bank of keywords per chapter. So these 5 bullet points here will go into that. So this task here encompasses one of the junior cycle key skills, which is being numerate, and it's also available to students in their textbooks if they'd rather work from that. But students will be given Chromebooks to complete the second activity on that page. But just look up the first one there. We've got birth rates, death rates, natural increase, natural decrease, and a percentage change per year. So the USA is already filled out, but I will do a demonstration on the board and model the procedure to be followed. So for example, I will do Ireland. I'll have the birth rate minus the death rate, and I'll explain obviously how to know whether it's a natural increase or a natural decrease, as well as finding the percentage change per year. I'll be on hand in the classroom to pass around to students if they need any help when they're completing the other 3. Once that's finished, then using the students' Chromebooks, they'll go on to that website below there, which we already looked at the beginning of the class when we found out the new world population for the day that we're teaching it, and they will complete those 4 questions there along the side also into their homework copies. Again, I'll be on hand to go around the classroom should students need help with anything. This is the final slide that the students will see in this lesson. So they'll know that the yellow box at the top there is their homework, which they'll take down into their homework journals. It's not a written task, it's learning. So they'll have their textbook there to revise page 240 to 243. That will be tested then at the beginning of the next lesson with another retrieval practice starter task. So the students will have to answer, or I'll put up another 5 questions from Carousel that will deal directly with the material that was covered in today's lesson. Then at the bottom there in the green, I've just revisited the learning intentions that were set at the beginning of the class. So by now, students should be able to define the terms birth rate and death rate, as well as calculate population change, identify natural increase and decrease in population numbers. Depending on time then, I could give them a sticky note just as a form of a formative assessment check and ask them to define a term or to give me a keyword or a definition that they've learned in this lesson. We'll pick up from that then the next day.